In the grand, often tumultuous and frequently mythologized narrative of rock and roll, there exist certain moments that transcend mere performance. They become something akin to sacred texts, instances where time, place, and artistry converge with such force that they carve a permanent sigil into the cultural consciousness. The Beatles on the Apple Corps rooftop, a final defiant blast of pure pop genius against the London skyline. Jimi Hendrix at Monterey, a fiery sacrificial baptism that redefined the electric guitar. Bob Dylan at Newport, an act of electric apostasy that drew a line in the sand between folk purity and rock's untamed future. These are the markers, the seismic shifts in the landscape. And then there is Pink Floyd, standing not before a screaming throng, but in the spectral, sun-scorched silence of a dead Roman city. To speak of Pink Floyd's performance in the ancient amphitheater of Pompeii in October of 1971 is to speak of an event that stands utterly alone, an audacious, hauntingly beautiful, and frankly, almost unbelievable statement that continues to ripple through the very fabric of music and film. It was a happening born not of a grand, meticulously crafted design, but of a filmmaker's misplaced passport, a band's search for its soul, and the kind of serendipity that feels like fate. It was, in essence, a glorious, world-altering accident. To truly excavate the meaning and significance of Pink Floyd, Live at Pompeii, one must first drill down into the volatile and creatively fertile ground from which it sprang. The early 1970s were a period of immense cultural and social whiplash. The lysergic utopian dreams of the 1960s had curdled into a harsh, gray dawn. The come-down was brutal. The optimistic promises of peace and love had soured, leaving a generation grappling with the protracted agony of the Vietnam War, the burgeoning cynicism of Watergate-era politics, and a profound sense of disillusionment. In the realm of popular music, this societal shift manifested in a decisive move away from the concise, 3-minute radio-friendly pop single of the past towards more ambitious, complex, and often ponderous forms. This was the undisputed dawn of progressive rock, a genre that, for all its later derided excesses, represented a vital and fearless artistic movement. It was a genre that embraced labyrinthine compositions, virtuosic instrumentalism, and weighty thematic concerns, drawing as much from the hallowed halls of classical music and the smoky clubs of jazz as from the foundational bedrock of the blues. Bands like King Crimson, with their jagged, terrifyingly complex arrangements, Genesis with their theatrical, pastoral fantasies, and Yes, with their quasi-mystical, intricate soundscapes, were fundamentally redrawing the map of what rock music could be. They demanded more from their listeners than a tapping foot and a catchy chorus. They demanded engagement, concentration, and an open mind. Pink Floyd, at this precise juncture, was a band adrift in a sea of its own making, a creative entity in a profound state of transition. The brilliant, erratic star of their founder, the visionary Syd Barrett, had collapsed into a black hole of acid-fueled psychosis. His genius, which had defined their whimsical, paisley-patterned early sound, had become a casualty of his own explorations, and his departure in 1968 left a creative vacuum of staggering proportions. The remaining members, Roger Waters on bass and vocals, David Gilmour on guitar and vocals, Richard Wright on keyboards, and Nick Mason on drums, were left to navigate the wreckage. They were a quartet of immense yet disparate talents, struggling to forge a new identity. The albums that immediately followed Barrett's exit, while containing undeniable moments of brilliance, were often sprawling, unfocused affairs. They were the sound of a band searching, sometimes desperately, for a cohesive voice. The pastoral orchestral sweep of Atom Heart Mother 1970 and the schizophrenic bifurcated studio and live experiment of Umaguma 1969 showcased their boundless ambition, but also their lack of a unified direction. They were a band with the technical prowess and the sonic imagination to create entire worlds, but they lacked a clear, guiding philosophy. That vital coalescence began to truly happen with their 1971 album, Metal. It was on this record, and specifically on the epic sidelong masterpiece, Echoes, that the definitive Pink Floyd sound finally crystallized. Here they found the perfect, symbiotic synthesis of Gilmour's soaring lyrical guitar lines, Wright's ethereal atmospheric keyboard textures, Mason's dynamic, nuanced drumming, and Waters' burgeoning obsession with grand, unifying lyrical and thematic concepts. It was a sound that was at once vast and intimate, cosmic and deeply, achingly human. It was the sound of four distinct musical personalities finally learning to breathe as one. Metal was the launch pad, the final systems check before the stratospheric journey that would be the dark side of the moon. Live at Pompeii would serve as the public, visual confirmation of this newfound power. It was against this backdrop of creative rebirth that a young, ambitious Scottish filmmaker named Adrian Mabin entered their orbit. Mabin, a man of refined artistic sensibilities, was fascinated by the intersection of music and the visual arts. His initial pitch to the band's manager, Steve O'Rourke, was a rather conventional, if high-minded one. A film that would juxtapose Pink Floyd's music with the surrealist art of painters like René Magritte and Giorgio de Chirico, exploring the subconscious links between sound and image. The band, weary of the endless procession of filmmakers wanting to capture their psychedelic essence, was politely but firmly uninterested. The idea, it seemed, was dead on arrival. It lay dormant until a fateful trip to Italy, a journey that would change the course of Mabin's career and the band's legacy forever. During his travels, Mabin discovered he had lost his passport, forcing him to retrace his steps to the Bay of Naples. It was on this unplanned detour that he found himself, at dusk, wandering through the deserted, spectral ruins of the ancient Roman amphitheater of Pompeii. In the eerie, profound silence of the deserted arena, with the brooding, ominous specter of Mount Vesuvius looming in the distance, Mabin had his eureka moment. This was the place, not as a passive backdrop for a conventional concert film, but as an active, silent participant in the performance itself. He envisioned an anti-Woodstock, a deliberate and stark rejection of the peace and love festival ethos. There would be no sprawling, muddy audience, no counter-cultural spectacle. The only spectators would be the ghosts of the city's past, the silent stone witnesses to a catastrophe that had frozen a civilization in time nearly 2 millennia earlier. The sheer, unadulterated audacity of the idea cannot be overstated. To take one of the world's most iconic and sacrosanct archaeological sites, a city petrified by a cataclysmic volcanic eruption in 79 AD, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and to use its heart as a stage for a modern, amplified rock band, was a move that bordered on the sacrilegious. Pompeii was not just a collection of ruins. It was a sprawling, open-air tomb, a place of profound historical significance and a sobering testament to the terrifying fragility of human existence in the face of nature's wrath. To introduce the decibels, the feedback, and the electronic pulse of a 1970s rock band into this hallowed space was a monumental gamble, one that could have easily collapsed into a display of monumental, hubristic arrogance. Yet it was precisely this inherent, jarring tension between the ancient and the modern, the organic stone and the electric wire, the deafening silence of history and the piercing wail of a distorted guitar, that would ultimately make Live at Pompeii such a singular and compelling work of art. In a strange way, the band was simply reactivating the venue's original purpose. The amphitheater, a marvel of Roman acoustic engineering, was designed to amplify and project sound to create an immersive, overwhelming experience for its audience. Pink Floyd, with their arsenal of amplifiers and speakers, was simply tapping into that ancient design, albeit with a sonic palette that the Romans could never have possibly imagined. The band, who had initially dismissed Mabin, was won over by the sheer magnificent lunacy of the concept. This was not another film about the scene. This was something elemental, something stark and powerful. And so, in early October 1971, Pink Floyd and a small dedicated film crew descended upon Pompeii, armed with their full touring rig and a 24-track mobile recording unit that had to be painstakingly transported from Paris. The logistical challenges were, to put it mildly, daunting. A massive 3-kilometer-long cable had to be run from the modern town of Pompeii's City Hall to provide power to the site. The band's extensive equipment, the stacks of Hewatt amplifiers, the Binson Ecorec delay units, the massive PA system, Nick Mason's gleaming Ludwig drum kit, Rick Wright's array of Hammond and Farfisa organs had to be painstakingly hand-carried and wheeled through the ancient, uneven stone streets and into the heart of the amphitheater. For 4 days, from the 4th to the 7th of October, the band and crew worked under grueling conditions, battling the intense, baking heat of the southern Italian day and the biting, penetrating cold of the desert night, all to capture the performances that would form the spine of the film. The set list chosen for the POMPEII performance was, in itself, a perfect snapshot of a band at a pivotal crossroads, a bridge between their space rock, improvisational past, and the thematic, architectural grandeur that would define their future. They opened the proceedings with the thunderous, driving instrumental "One of These Days," the opening track from Metal. It was a statement of intent, a track that immediately established the film's raw, visceral, and almost violent energy. The sight of Roger Waters and David Gilmour, 2 dueling basses in hand, their slight figures dwarfed by the massive curved stone structure behind them, is an image that has become indelibly etched into the iconography of rock music. The track's single distorted vocal line delivered by Nick Mason, "One of these days I'm going to cut you into little pieces," takes on a particularly menacing quality in the desolate, sun-bleached arena. It's less a rock concert and more an ominous pagan ritual. They followed this with "A Saucerful of Secrets," a sprawling multi-part instrumental from their second album that served as a direct link to their post-Barrett experimental phase. In POMPEII, the piece becomes a journey into pure sound and texture. It is a showcase for their improvisational prowess and their collective willingness to explore the outer, often cacophonous, reaches of sonic experimentation. The segment titled "Syncopated Pandemonium" is exactly that, a maelstrom of crashing cymbals, distorted organ stabs, and screaming guitar feedback that feels like the sonic equivalent of the volcanic eruption that destroyed the very city they were standing in. It then resolves into the final hymn-like section, Celestial Voices, with Wright's funereal organ and Gilmour's wordless angelic vocal creating a mood of profound post-apocalyptic peace. It is a moment of sublime beauty emerging from chaos. The film also featured a searing, definitive rendition of "Careful with That Axe, Eugene," a track that had been a staple of their live shows for years. It is a slow-burning instrumental that perfectly encapsulates the band's mastery of dynamics. It begins with a quiet, menacing bass line from Waters and Wright's subtle, jazzy keyboard phrases, creating a palpable sense of unease. The tension builds incrementally, relentlessly, until it finally erupts in a terrifying crescendo, punctuated by Waters' now legendary blood-curdling primal scream. In the context of the empty amphitheater, the scream echoes with an unnerving, ghostly quality, as if he is channeling the terror of the city's original inhabitants. It's a moment of pure, uninhibited catharsis, both terrifying and exhilarating. But it was the monumental performance of echoes that formed the undisputed heart and soul of the film. This 23-minute epic, which occupied the entire second side of Metal, was the ultimate showcase for the band's newfound maturity, cohesion, and compositional genius. The performance in POMPEII is, without exaggeration, mesmerizing. It is divided into 2 parts for the film, bookending the other performances. Gilmour's guitar weeps, soars, and sings, his iconic solos echoing through the ancient amphitheater with a haunting, otherworldly beauty that seems to hang in the hot, still air. Richard Wright's keyboard work is the atmospheric glue, creating a rich, immersive tapestry of sound that ranges from the elegiac grandeur of the Hammond organ to the strange, whale song-like effects he coaxes from his VCS-3 synthesizer. Nick Mason's drumming is a masterclass in dynamic control, shifting effortlessly from delicate, subtle rhythms to powerful, explosive fills. And at the very center of it all is Roger Waters' simple, yet profoundly effective, 2-note bass line, the hypnotic, sonar-like pulse that acts as the anchor for the entire sprawling composition. The performance footage is masterfully intercut with slow, lingering shots of the band wandering, like lost tourists, through the desolate, ash-covered streets and villas of POMPEII, creating a powerful and poignant visual metaphor for the song's central themes of communication, connection, and isolation. When Gilmour and Wright harmonize on the lyrics, "Strangers passing in the street, by chance 2 separate glances meet, "And I am you and what I see is me." The words resonate with an almost unbearable poignancy, a dialogue across millennia between the living artists and the long-dead inhabitants of the ruins. The filming process in Pompeii was, by all accounts, an arduous and often frustrating affair. The crew had to contend with the fickle, unpredictable weather, the logistical nightmare of powering a full-scale rock concert in the middle of a protected archaeological site, and the constant nagging technical glitches caused by faulty power supplies. Yet these very challenges and limitations only seemed to distill and intensify the performance. Stripped of the crutch of a live audience, denied the feedback loop of applause and adoration, the band was forced to turn inward, to focus with an almost telepathic intensity on the music itself, on the intricate, unspoken dialogue between the four members. The result is a performance that is both incredibly precise and wonderfully loose, a testament to the thousands of hours they had spent playing together in clubs, halls, and studios. It is the sound of a band in perfect isolated communion with its own art. Following the initial, sun-drenched shoot in Pompeii, it became clear to Mabon that he needed more footage to complete his film. Additional material was filmed in a darkened Paris studio at the Europa Sonar facility in December of 1971. It was here that they recorded a hypnotic, trance-like rendition of "Set the Controls for the Heart of the Sun," a Waters-penned track from A Saucerful of Secrets that, with its gong and eerie, modal structure, always felt like a journey into the mystic East. When intercut with close-ups of the band's impassive faces, solarized footage of the Pompeii ruins, and shots of bubbling volcanic mud pits near Vesuvius, the performance takes on an almost ritualistic, ceremonial quality. It was also in Paris that they filmed the wonderfully whimsical and charmingly absurd Mademoiselle Nobs, a straightforward 12-bar blues featuring David Gilmour on harmonica and acoustic guitar, Roger Waters on another acoustic, and a howling, mournful Afghan hound named Nobs, owned by Madonna Buglione, the daughter of a circus director, providing the lead vocals. It's a moment of pure, unpretentious levity in an otherwise intensely serious and atmospheric film, a crucial reminder that for all their cosmic explorations and philosophical ponderings, Pink Floyd was still a band with a deep-seated English sense of humor and absurdity. The original 60-minute version of Pink Floyd, Live at Pompeii, premiered at the Edinburgh Film Festival in September 1972, where it was met with a mixture of confusion and acclaim. It was a film that defied easy categorization. It wasn't a conventional concert film, nor was it a straightforward documentary. It existed in its own unique, unclassifiable space. In 1974, Mabon, seeking to capitalize on the band's skyrocketing fame post-Dark Side of the Moon, re-released the film in an expanded version. This new director's cut included documentary footage of the band at work in Abbey Road Studios during the recording sessions for what would become one of the best-selling and most culturally significant albums of all time. These studio segments, capturing the band members eating greasy spoon meals, discussing football, and meticulously crafting the soundscapes of On the Run, Us and Them, and Brain Damage, served a dual purpose. On one hand, they served to demystify the band, to peel back the curtain of their increasingly monolithic public image and reveal the ordinary, often mundane, human beings behind the music. On the other hand, these glimpses into their painstaking creative process, the endless experimentation with synthesizers, the layering of vocal harmonies, the search for the perfect sound effect, only added to their mystique. It provided a fascinating and essential counterpoint to the mythic elemental performance in Pompeii, grounding the film in the stark reality of the recording studio while simultaneously highlighting the alchemical process by which their masterpieces were forged. So what is it about Live at Pompeii that grants it such an enduring, almost mystical power? Why does it continue to fascinate and inspire us more than half a century after it was created? The answer is as multi-layered as the band's music itself. It is, of course, about the sheer, breathtaking audacity of the concept, the magnificent, surrealist collision of ancient history and futuristic art. It is about the raw, untamed power of the performance, the sound of a world-class band at the absolute zenith of its instrumental powers, stripped of all artifice and distraction. But more than that, it is about the film's haunting, elegiac tone, its profound and unspoken meditation on time, memory, mortality, and the enduring power of human creation. It establishes a dialogue across the chasm of time, between the living and the dead, the ephemeral and the eternal. In the final analysis, Live at Pompeii is so much more than just a concert film. It is a singular work of art that effortlessly transcends its genre. The absence of an audience, initially a logistical necessity, became its greatest artistic strength. It transformed the event from a performance into a communion, a pure, unmediated confrontation between the band and the very essence of their music, with the silent, ghostly amphitheater acting as the sole judge and resonator. It is a film that invites us, demands us to listen not just with our ears, but with our entire beings, to feel the immense, crushing weight of history in every reverberating note, to sense the ghosts of Pompeii stirring in the pregnant silence between the songs. In doing so, it offers us something truly rare and precious, a moment of pure, unadulterated artistic creation, captured in amber, that will continue to resonate for as long as there are people who seek to find meaning, beauty, and truth in the elemental marriage of sound and silence. It remains a stark, beautiful, and uncompromising challenge, a gauntlet thrown down to all future generations of artists. It says with quiet, monumental confidence, "This is what we did. We stood in the ruins of a dead empire, and we made a noise that echoed through time. Now, what will you do?" And in that silent, resonant challenge lies its most profound and everlasting legacy.